Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Time is now 2:03. I call to order the meeting of the Orange County Sewer District Number One Advisory Committee for Tuesday, August 19th, 2025. A copy of the agenda of this meeting may be found on the county website under the tab to the Legislature. Please silence your phones and electronic devices. And at this time, I ask you to please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Kelly, can you do roll call?
Here. Kelly. Cheney. Ellers.
Here.
Martel. Here.
Here.
Four present, two absent.
Thank you. All right, first up, I'd like to call up Rick Goldman. I don't know if Rick, which Rick.
You won't be.
Okay, Joe Mahoney, senior assistant county attorney.
Bob will be here in a second.
All right, Eric Denenga, Commissioner of Department of Public Works. Robert Gray, Commissioner of VF&S. And that's who we'll have today.
And yet, Mary Beth on the line.
You should be having a fun.
I think she'll start on the first topic.
Mary Beth Fianconi, partner, Delaware Engineering, Delaware Engineering, DPC, will be joining us virtually today. Depending on how things work, either on screen or by phone. While waiting for Mary Beth, I'd like the record to show that we have in the audience today, we have John Carl, Village of Monroe trustee, the executive administrator for Kira Joel, Mayor Wayne Mitchell, Mayor of Village of Harriman, Carol Schneider, deputy mayor. We have Tony Cardone, supervisor of the town of Monroe, and also Dory Poole, town of Monroe councilwoman. Thank you all for being here. We'll get started shortly.
Okay. Okay. Did. Okay.
Great joining the meeting. Bob, we're just waiting for Mary.
Oh. Here we also have one of the medics of the Courage Joel community. That is to be here 8th floor. I'm sure you've met him before.
Yeah.
He lives in the town of Village.
Welcome, Dave. Thank you for coming.
Okay, you probably don't want to.
You should be doing it anyway.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if you want, you could probably go down to the last item and start with that. If you're waiting, I don't know.
We'll give Mary Beth another
I
minute.
don't know what's the ETA on Mary Beth.
We'll give her another minute.
Yes, okay. There she is.
There she is.
Hello, Mary Beth.
Hi, everyone. I apologize.
No problem. You can hear us. We can hear you.
I can.
All right. Seeing that you're coming from afar, you want to go first?
Sure.
First up, we have the design phase update for the Harriman wastewater treatment plant. And then we have grant applications update review the public hearing and engineer report of H2S gas levels. But the top three are probably in your wheelhouse better than anything else. So if you want to.
Of course. Well, hello, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be with you physically today. My schedule just didn't accommodate it, but I'm happy to join you virtually. I assume you have the memo that was previously distributed. So we can just walk through this. It's our standard format. So we're going to discuss the work that's been conducted since our last meeting, which was July 22nd. The next design review meeting is actually tomorrow. So some of this is topics that will be discussed at the next design review meeting. Some of it's works in progress. So we remain on target for 60% design due at the end of September. That is on our schedule that we've had now for quite some time. The sludge handling and disposal discussion continues, although I will say we are now in conceptual design for the sludge hopper option, which is sort of the most sustainable long-term option for the county. So that's a positive move. The county staff right now, this option will allow some room in the existing treatment plant to be freed up. So we're kind of maximizing spaces. So the staff is considering, they would want to consider for the current sludge storage area and the train 3 filter area. Grit and grease removal options. This is sort of a part of the wastewater process that we have to figure out. The crew went to the Schuylerville wastewater treatment plant, which has what's called an aeroductor made by Lakeside Equipment in service there. They have had that in service for about 10 years and report very good results. So from an equipment selection perspective, that is being considered in the design. We've also advanced the scum discharge, which is going to go to something called a wire wedge screen and then to a dumpster. I realize these are a lot of details, but I want folks to understand the complexity of the process at hand here. For screen options, we're looking at a combination of mechanical and manual screens. Mechanical screens are the ones that we rely on day in and day out. The manual screens are there for bypass. So that if we need to take a mechanical screen down, we can do so. And the equipment that's being reviewed right now are Duperon screens. We've had really, really good success with them, and as have the operators at Harriman. So that is the current review process for the screenings. And then on the really positive side of things, on the secondary access off of 17, we've met with DOT yet again. They had no comments on the preliminary plan and recommended that we advance to final design plans, which we are doing. And the application to purchase surplus property is in progress. So it seems like we are getting closer and closer to a final approval from DOT on that secondary access. And folks will remember that that serves two purposes. One is during construction. It allows more direct access to what we think of as the back of the property, the east side of the property. But also, once we are out of construction and we are in operations, it's an additional truck entrance to the site. So it will take some traffic off local roads, Evergreen and River, which is a benefit to the community for sure. One footnote on the access, just for everybody to recall, that section of 17 has a median. So this will be a right in, right out, but that's okay. It still serves the same purpose to get truck traffic in and out of the site during construction and equipment and materials, as well as post-construction. So that's kind of where we are with the technical work. There's a whole lot of other things going on behind the scenes, but all good things. Everything is advancing. Sub-consultants, as you know, we have the survey was complete quite some time ago, the lead and asbestos survey. That was also complete, and that's for the structures that will be demolished during the construction process. And then geotechnical work was preliminarily scheduled originally for August, and that has been moved into September, which is fine for our schedule. That's a really important part of this. Folks who were on the site tour with us will remember when we were standing between train 1 and train 2, that's where the new sequencing batch reactors will be constructed. They are very, very large tanks, relatively deep in the ground, and that's going to be really the focus of the geotechnical work. There'll be some other things that will go on as well with respect to stormwater and some other things, but really for foundations and those kinds of things, that's a significant focus of that work. And shoring plan for existing structures. And this is also going to help us with determining the volumes of water we may have for dewatering of our excavations on site. So that's our technical update. Moving on to regulatory status, we've had some very positive movement on this front as well. We have no less than 3, probably more like 4 or 5 things going on with our friends at the Department of Environmental Conservation. This is sort of the highlights. We had submitted what we considered an interim or we called it a Speedies Light application for our 9 million gallon a day upgrade. That was to engage with regulatory staff and get some feedback with respect to constituents in that way we could expect in the Speedies when it comes out and is finalized. The DEC accepted that interim our notice of incomplete application 3 for the 6 MGD Speedies. We have had a lot of discussion with DEC about this. This is for the variance. And you'll see there's some notes here down a little below this for the August 8th meeting. So I'll kind of talk about that in a sec. And then the other one is the county was required to submit an update, a renewal for the existing permit. That was back in 2023. And we've done that, and DEC has that documentation in hand, and at the moment they have no additional requirements for information. So on the regulatory front, we had a virtual meeting with DEC. I'm not kidding when I say it was a cast of thousands. I think we had about 25 people on the virtual meeting from across DEC, different divisions, the main office and the region, as well as Orange County technical staff. And I have to say, I very much appreciate everyone being willing to come together for these meetings. They're large, they're complicated, there's a lot of people, and everyone came to the meeting on August 8th prepared to work. It was very productive. We did review NOIA 3 for the 6 MGD variance. We really spent some time talking about control strategies and how those can roll out as we advance through time through this existing permit as well as into our next permit, which will be for the upgrade. We accomplished some really good things with respect to the upgrade Speedies, which was that the department had issued us back in May, we'll call them regulatory comments. They had to do with freshwater wetlands. We are obviously discharging to the stream, so there are wetlands in the area that we need to address. Other DEC permits, which include, I mentioned, water withdrawal permits for our dewatering operations when we dig our excavations for our tanks. We will need a stormwater permit because we are definitely going to disturb more than an acre of land. Stream bank disturbance. We will also need a stream bank disturbance permit because we are putting in a new outfall. We're replacing our existing outfall with a new one. We talked a bit about seeker for this project, which, as folks will remember, we did about a 2-year seeker review. So that we've checked the box there. There are a couple of other administrative items we have to deal with. DEC Commissioner Policy number 29, which is Environmental Justice and Permitting Policy, and the Environmental Justice Siting Law and its relationship to permitting. And we are working through technical responses to that notice of incomplete application at this time. DEC indicated that they will not be issuing technical comments at this time, so that was a big hurdle to overcome. Our staff and county staff are working on that response to NOIA 1. my understanding from folks who are working on this is we should have draft response document sometime next week, which will be ideal. And then the plan is to make a submission back to DEC on this, and then DEC committed to having a follow-up meeting in September so that we can keep the ball rolling, keep the momentum moving forward on the new permit application. So very positive results of our outreach to DEC. And again, we just really want to thank DEC and especially Region 3 leadership for Kelly Totoro, the regional director, for really providing leadership on this matter and getting the right people in the room. So very, very positive news. And moving on to financing. So it's kind of our usual suspects, but more positive news. I love being able to deliver positive news. So the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, CWSRF, which is a combination loan and grant program. Folks will remember we had submitted an application, an in-progress application for this financing back in May. And we were working our way through the multitude of steps that are necessary to get through a complete financing application. People will remember we had had a hearing in March on this. Unfortunately, the county used its normal hearing notice, which for literally virtually everything the county does is perfectly sufficient. Under this section of law, our hearing notice has to have specific information in it. We acknowledged after the fact that we did not have that information in our hearing notice, so we re-noticed and we reconducted a hearing on July 23rd. We did essentially the same format we previously did. We had a PowerPoint presentation that described the project and the financing. We opened it up for comments, and in a minute here, we'll go through those comments and the responses. The hearing was closed on that same day. There was a legislative request for consideration of the projects in the public interest that went to Fiscal Services on July 28th. Y'all will recall we went through this process already once before, but we are doing it again because of the rehearing. And that resolution of public interest, I actually just received the certified copy this morning. That was adopted at the August 7th. Actually, it was the August that got moved because you guys didn't have any power. The August 14th meeting. I also had some outreach with the Office of the State Comptroller. They received our application. I just want to mention that they had high praise for the application and its completeness. We deal with them a lot, and they very much appreciate complete applications. They get a lot of applications from across the state that are not complete, and they were very complimentary of Orange County and how complete and thorough the application was. So that process is moving its way through. So our next move here, and there's a couple of things that are tied together. We have a legislative request, I believe, that's wending its way through. There's 2 legislative requests for September. One is for an approval or an authorization to submit an application to something called WIA, which is the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And the other one is a resolution of intent to bond the project. So it's not a bond resolution because we don't have OSC approval yet, but it's a resolution of intent to bond, which meets that WIA application requirement. That's going to Fiscal Services on the 25th of August, I believe, and then it should be on those 2 should be on the agenda for the September 4th legislative session. And then here's the good news. So I'm about to do the alphabet soup thing on you guys. DWSRF, CWSRF. We just talked about CWSRF, Clean Water State Revolving Fund. The state loves its acronyms. For the federal fiscal year 2026, so that's the one that starts on October 1st of this year, the intended use plan, or IUP, was issued in draft format on August 13th. As a result of that, we were notified that this project that we have in front of us qualifies for $25 million in zero interest borrowing for up to 30 years. And the balance of the project cost is at subsidized borrowing, 50% of market rate at the time of closing for the balance of costs. So this is really significant. Y'all will recall when we've talked about this in public session and we've done our math to say how much will users pay for this project. We've said it's around $1,000 a year for each household, with half of that being existing costs, about $500 that people pay today, and the other half being $500 that would be retiring debt service on this project. When we calculated that $500 for a household of retiring debt service on this project, we used market rate borrowing. So we considered it sort of the worst case scenario of the county. As you all know, the county exec just made a recent announcement about the excellent bond rating that the county has. But even with spectacular bond ratings, it's not free. There's an interest rate associated with borrowing. So the effect of 25 million in zero interest borrowing for 30 years and the balance at 50% of market will truly assist in reducing that debt burden per single family home as we move forward with this project. It's a really big win for the county. So can't emphasize enough how valuable this is for us. So excellent news. Excellent news. Does anybody have questions on that?
I just want to say great job, Mary Beth. That is some of the best news I've had in a long time, and we've been doing this a long time. So thank you for all of everyone's efforts across the board. And
Just to clarify, because in the paper here, it says 50% grant. Mary Beth said 50% market rate.
If you're on the bottom of page 2,
so we get zero
Page
interest.
3.
yeah, so go to the bottom of page 2. So 25 million in zero interest, 30-year borrowing, and the balance of project costs at subsidized 50% market rate. That's what we know we have. At this point, that's what we know we have. If we flip over to page 3 of my note, we talk about the other 3 potential sources of financing, and we don't know we have these yet. So I like putting stuff in the bucket of things we know versus things we might know. So we know we're getting that financing we just talked about. At the top of page 3, and this might have been what you were reading, it says bipartisan infrastructure law. It's a loan and grant program. It says 50% grant, 50% zero interest, 30-year loan up to 25 million. So this bipartisan infrastructure law, information on it is included in that draft intended use plan. However, it's a little unclear. The status of this programming is a little bit unclear. And I just want to say, I know we've been asked a couple times about, is this federal money? And is this something, we've all heard about cuts on the federal level. Is this something that's associated with cuts on the federal level? The answer is no. It's not associated with cuts on the federal level. What it is associated with, and this will not surprise anyone who has been listening to me for the last how many ever years, these grant programs are, to say that they're popular is not doing them any justice. They are what the state will say is oversubscribed, meaning more applicants than money. I will prefer to look at it as underfunded because I think every project that comes has merit, right? So the status of bipartisan infrastructure law for new projects that are just being listed is unclear. And I put a note in here. I put status is to be determined, final IUP October 1. In speaking with people at the Environmental Facilities Corporation, sometime between the close of the intended use plan draft comment period, which is in September, and October 1st, they will have a definitive answer regarding the status of this funding source. So that is happening outside of us, right? We've done everything we need to do to be in the game for this. We just don't know from a statewide perspective what the status of the funding source is. So we're still out there. We just can't say, hey, we got this money. It's not possible to say that at this point. So does that clarify that? Okay. We did submit on July 31st with assistance from the county's grants team. They did a great job. A water quality improvement or WQIP grant. That was due through the consolidated funding applications process, online portal. That for general wastewater projects, which is we would be considered a general wastewater project, is up to $10 million in grant funds towards construction. So the metrics here are it's intended for projects with direct improvement to water quality and stressed watersheds. Y'all will remember that the Ramapo is considered a 303D listed watershed, so it is on the impaired water bodies list. And key to, advocating for this funding is DEC's awareness, because this is a DEC-based grant program. DEC's awareness of your project and your project's needs. And as I just outlined, we've had great working relationship with DEC about this project, so they're certainly aware of it, and they understand its importance. The other thing that DEC likes to see for projects to be successful in this program is that the applicant, or in this case the county, is committed to the project. Project is definitely going to happen. It's going to move forward no matter what. They like to know that because at the end of the day, they want to ensure that when they agree to give people grant funds, that those grant funds get used. So that one we submitted. When will we hear is the next thing, whether we got it or not is the next thing people ask. For quite some time, these announcements were usually made in December, usually the middle week of December of every year. A couple of years ago, that timeline stretched into March. I will say, because these programs are annual and they are tied to the state budget, and the funding, like all budget-based funding, as you know, it gets allocated, and then if you don't spend it, either you have to reappropriate into the next year or it goes away. So typically with this program, this is the 24th year of this program, we will get notices of award before the end of the fiscal year. So we would get noticed of this, likely no sooner than December, and likely no later than, ideally March. Right. So that's WQIP. And then the last one, which is the one that we are working on right now, I mentioned it before, is the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, or WIA. This application is due September 12th, which is coming right up on us. The application is in great shape, again, thanks to combination of our grant writers and the counties. The application requirements are exactly the same as the application we submitted back in May. This is another grant opportunity. It is 25% of net costs after the application of any other grants up to $25 million in $5 million annual increments. So we'll break that down for a second. Our project is $185 million max. Let's just say that we received $10 million in water quality improvement funding grants for construction. The math here would be that we would take 185 million, we would subtract 10 million, we get 175 million. And then we would be eligible for up to 25% grant, up to a max of 25 million. If you do a little math in your head, we would max this out because of our project size. So this one is potentially $25 million in grant funds. What is this project? What is this for? This is for advancing necessary projects that maybe don't meet traditional scoring objectives under any of the programs. So for us to complete this one and get it in the hopper, we have those two resolutions coming up for legislative request. A physical services one is simply to get permission to apply for this grant. And the second one is that intent to bond. And folks will remember that even if we get financing through the state, even if we take those loans that we previously talked about, the zero interest loan and the subsidized 50% of market, the backstop or the collateral for the state against the borrowing is a bond. Unlike at your house, where the collateral against your mortgage is the house. If you don't pay your mortgage, they come take your house. Well, funny thing, the state's not going to come and take your sewer system away from you. So the collateral for borrowing through the state is a bond resolution. It's basically the county's ability to raise revenue to pay back debt. So that is our update with respect to technical progress, regulatory status, and the financing. And then, Mr. Chairman, the last thing that I have on my to-do list is to go over the comments and the responses from the July 23rd rehearing, if that's,
Mary Beth, just
yes.
on, did you mention that, about the not matching traditional scoring? Are we in that category because of the high cost of this project?
Yeah, so not matching traditional scoring is where, for instance, if we look at some of the programmatic things, right, are relative to things like emerging contaminants. So PFOA, PFOS, some of them have to do with very, very low income communities. Now, we qualified as a community that has economic needs, so we will meet that scoring criteria. But this funding source is 100% state funded. It is was an act of the legislature in 2015, and it was intended to help communities who maybe had a project that really needed to get done. They had received some funding, but it wasn't enough funding for them to pull the trigger and say, I'm going to do my project, usually because of cost. So it's a gap filling funding mechanism. It's not tied to federal regulations. A lot of these are tied to federal regulations that say, here's where the money needs to go. So what's nice about this is the agencies have a little bit more flexibility to target this towards projects that they know need to happen. So it's really something that hopefully we can be successful with. The one thing I will say is it is not an infinite amount of money, just like any of these other programs. And a lot of how well you do when you apply for these is relationship of how much money is set aside for the federal fiscal year that you're in. Who is your competition? Right? And what are their problems? Are their problems more significant than yours? Are they less significant than yours? And so it's how much money, what are their problems, and also readiness. These agencies really want to see projects that aren't years and years and years out, just in the conceptual phase, that these projects are ready to pull the trigger on regulatory approvals. They're ready to pull the trigger eventually on construction, and our project would definitely be considered a project that is ready because we are so far. We're going to be at 60% design in September. So I think we should stack up well, but there are things that we can't control. We don't know who our competition is. We don't know if their projects are more compelling than ours, and it's a little hard to determine how much money is available to go around because we don't know how many people are going to be asking for projects. Because remember, it's that 25% thing. So if your project's small, say you do a $5 million project, 25% of $5 million is not a lot of money. And if all the other projects are small projects, then that should leave some extra funding in the program for a very, very large project like ours, where we would be maxing it out at 25 million. But we don't know what the competition is until all the applications are in.
Are there any other questions or comments from committee members? Okay, Mary Beth, if you want to go on to the comment review.
Okay, so I have a footnote to this. I prepared this document this morning, and I did not have the benefit of commentary from Attorney Mahoney. I did get some notes from him. So consider this a draft. His comments will be incorporated in the next version of this, the final version of this, and it will get recirculated to everyone. I will say that they are informative comments, but in general, the responses are pretty much all the same. There's nothing particularly new there. So folks will remember that we conducted a hearing at 2:30 on July 23rd. This was the second hearing for the same purpose. And again, I'll just repeat that the reason we did rehearing was because our hearing notice the first time lacked some details. Our hearing notice the second time certainly included those details, and so that anyone from the public who was interested to comment was certainly aware of the subject matter. So I did a brief presentation. It was substantively the same as the prior presentation. I simply had updated dates because some time had gone past. After that, the chairman opened the hearing for comment, and we had comment from Mike Egan, a resident of the town of Monroe. He asked that question that I actually covered earlier about bipartisan infrastructure law. I had mentioned it was expiring, and he wanted to know if this was a feature of the program or if it had something to do with changes in Washington. And as I mentioned, it was simply a 5-year program that was legislated during COVID. And so it's simply expiring because that's the way it was always intended to be. He also asked a question about, I had mentioned that this project is 2 phases. One of them is the upgrade and expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. He asked what the second phase is. And as folks who've been along for the ride know, the second phase is that the collection system, the trunk or interceptor sewers that are owned by the county have served their useful life. They did their job. And we need to upgrade and expand those at some point. We, meaning that county, needs to upgrade and expand those. We had put together some basic information about this when we did the environmental impact statement and the facility plan, but I believe the county is right now in the process of soliciting proposals for surveying and engineering services. And so the cost, will be based on the design that's conducted in the future. And obviously there'll be a very similar process to the one we're going through now, where there'll be public information and discussions about those costs and what they are and the scope of the project when we get there. His next comment was a comment that actually a number of people had. It was the same comment that I think 3 or 4 people had, which was that it seems unfair to base the user fees on the equivalency of a single family home, because houses have different numbers of people living in them who use different amounts of water. And the question was, is there a different way to assign costs? So the response is that, we acknowledge that different numbers of people live in different homes. Although the one thing we can say, and we've provided a lot of documentation on this, is that the Orange County Sewer District service area, whether it's in the sewer district or even in the satellite communities, is largely single family residences. That's the bulk of the users. So they are all single family homes. One of the challenges is that the number of people who live in a house changes over time. You could have a single individual buy a house, they get married, now there's 2 people living in the house, they have 2 kids, now there's 4 people living in the house, the kid goes to college, now there's 3 people living in the house, the next kid goes to college, now there's 2 people living in the house. We also have property transfers that happen where a house might have 4 or 5 people living in it today, but they sell it to a single person, or the other way around. And there is virtually no way for us to keep track of how many people live in a house over the course of time. So while, yes, there may be different numbers of people, it would be, it's infeasible to think that we would create a billing system based on the number of people. One of the other questions that comes up is, could we use water use as a proxy? And the problem we have is that of our 20 odd something thousand households, not all of them have water meters. A lot of people have a well. So we just don't have a common basis for charges. So the benefit assessment method of house as a house is the most clear and transparent method that we can use to assess costs. And I will just add the footnote. We discussed this in a prior meeting. Commercial businesses are multiples or divisors of the value of a home, and the county publishes a list of those on its website. So you can go look and see, okay, if it's a 20-seat restaurant, what is it paying relative to a single family home? And the county's done that for some time. That's not new. And the question was, will new users pay the same rate as current users? And the answer is yes, the rate structure applies to everybody. So if you're a new house, you're going to pay the same thing as an existing house. The footnote is, as we add more development, the cost to everyone actually goes down, because the incremental cost to provide that service is very, very marginal. It's a tiny amount of money relative to the increase in the number of users. So new users actually help reduce costs to all users. Our next comment was from Gadali, the administrator for the Village of Kiryas Joel. He wanted to thank the county for addressing the needs of the sewer district's residents. He mentioned that our speedies permit requirements are essentially an unfunded mandate and that we should emphasize this in our regulatory compliance is a driver of this project in our grant applications, which we have, and we appreciate that comment. He also indicated that aging infrastructure is a driver of the needs to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant even without the expansion, and that is factually true. Much of the treatment plant is 50 years old and needs to be improved whether or not we added capacity. And then the last comment that he made was with respect to the expansion, the new years, which will pay for the extra capacity. So we simply acknowledged his comments. Next commenter was Joyce Sloan. She's a resident of the village of South Blooming Grove. She said that she was concerned with overdevelopment straining water supplies, and yet communities continue to approve housing. The sewer does not address this issue. We simply acknowledge these comments that the home rule, the ability for communities to zone their the properties within their communities and make those types of decisions is outside of the purview of the sewer district. She also mentioned that the flat rate for all residential properties seems unfair, should be based on water consumption. Not using water consumption does not incentivize conservation. That last point, using meters does incentivize conservation, so we definitely would support that. But again, this is a sewer project, and as I outlined before, the benefit assessment based on the lowest common denominator single family home is the most practicable and fair method that we have at the moment of assessing the costs. She mentions that people on wells and septics may have to drill new wells, and she also commented that grant funds come from taxpayers. These grant funds, that is where they come from. And what I would say to the grant fund comment is go get your money back. You all have paid a lot of taxes. If you don't get it, it's not like it, gets returned to you in some other way. So we are always aggressive at trying to get grant funds. And then with respect to people in well and septics may have to drill new wells, again, that is not a function of this project. So we simply acknowledge that comment. She also commented that costs could escalate and could be much more. I will point out, as folks know, the project is planned. It includes escalation for labor and materials, and it also includes contingencies for unforeseen costs. So to the extent that we can, we've tried to create a maximum project cost that we don't believe we will exceed. Maria May, who's a resident, and unfortunately I did not get where she lives, but she asked a very good question, which is what measures could be taken to avoid doubling sewer rates in the future? And we talked about in our response a couple of different things. One is asset management, which is the concept that we evaluate equipment over time. And we make determinations about whether it is wise to maintain, upgrade, or abandon a piece of equipment on a scheduled basis so that the costs of those activities are known and can be planned. And then that relates to periodic budget assessments to make sure that the incremental needs of the sewer system are being met so that to the extent that costs do go up, they go up ideally a few percent a year, just as they do at your house. Or with your maintenance of your car or anything else that you have, rather than being a significant change. I will say, when you do a capital project and you have bonded debt, you're going to expect to pay more. It's like buying a new house. You're going to have a mortgage. If your mortgage was previously paid off and it's not, you need to pay off the new mortgage. So that is just sort of a function of maintaining infrastructure. Bonnie Rum, who is a resident of Blooming Grove, made a similar comment to a prior commenter regarding unrestricted development is allowed even where there's no water or sewer. We simply acknowledge that comment. Again, we're in a home rule state and the county sewer district does not have agency or authority over local land use decisions. Ms. Rum also made the same comment regarding rates based on single family homes being unfair because of the number of people who live in the homes. And I won't repeat that response, but it is the same as the prior one with regard to the challenges of using a different metric. She also asked the question, are people on septic systems charged for this project? What does access to sewer mean? And the response is that only benefited properties pay for the project, and that's those properties connected to the sewer system or that could connect. who are located within a designated district or service area will repay debt, and then only connected users pay operations and maintenance costs. I will say that this comment is the same as a comment from the prior hearing, so that response is already in the record. And then developers should be charged to pay for the extra capacity. And again, as we mentioned, same rate is applied to everyone, but as we add users, the cost of the project goes down to everybody because we have more people to share in the cost. We then had comments from the mayor of the Village of Harriman, who read them from a written statement, and he was kind enough to provide his written statement to us so that we could have it word for word. So you see it represented here. I'm just simply going to summarize rather than read this entire thing. Essentially, the village understands that the county is working very hard on this project and has taken a lot of consideration to get to this point. The point that the mayor is making is the sewer plant is located in the Village of Harriman, and as such, the residents of Harriman as the host community are impacted or by the operations of the plant on a daily basis. He requests that the county consider some kind of a compensation or consideration to the ratepayers in the Village of Harriman for that impact. And so the response here is, that we certainly acknowledge that the Village of Harriman is the host community, and as such, many activities at the plant have a more direct effect on residents in Harriman than they do in other locations. From a sewer rate perspective, the district is required to treat all users in an objectively reasonable manner relative to the benefit received. Geographical distance of a project to the treatment plant is not a factor in benefit assessments. It's also noted for the record that a number of properties in the Village of Woodbury are at least as close, if not closer, than those in Harriman. So the proximity thing is kind of a challenge. However, that said, the project does offer substantial mitigation to address the major impacts that have been identified on the village. Those are outlined in the environmental impact statement that was prepared a couple of years ago. I won't, again, read through all of these things, but essentially the mitigations include coordinating construction with the village. So for instance, if there's a village event or something happening on a particular day, we'll make sure that there's nothing really horrible happening at the plant site. Also make sure we do advance notice of activities that might be disruptive off-site, including things like material deliveries, demolition, or exposure of odorous material to the environment. We'll make sure the public has plenty of notice. So while we can't control everything, at least people will understand what's happening and the duration. Also, during construction, dust and stormwater management will be, dust control and stormwater management will be implemented on a continuous basis. Post-construction mitigations include significantly improved odor control because, as folks who were on the plant tour know, we're going to house our odorous unit processes in buildings with negative pressure and odor control systems. As in, odors are the number one complaint from the local community. And then in addition, we talked about this a little earlier, the county is pursuing a secondary access off of Route 17 through DOT lands that would be acquired by the county. This will reduce both construction and operations truck traffic on Evergreen and River. And so these measures are very significant to help address two of the major concerns that the village has regarding the plant, which are the odors and the truck traffic. And with that, there were no other comments at the hearing, so the public hearing was closed. So in addition to the oral comments, there was an email submitted by BJ Mendelson. He's the publisher of the Monroe Gazette. And again, as with the others, I'm not going to read every word here, but essentially, Mr. Mendelson is questioning the county's approach to securing low-cost financing and grants, and if the county is taking advantage of every opportunity. And I can say I work with literally hundreds of communities across the state, and I can assure everyone that the county is doing everything in its power to take advantage of every opportunity to seek state and federal financing for this project. No stone has left unturned. every opportunity has been followed. So I think sometimes these processes where funding is provided to communities for these kinds of projects can be challenging. They're complex. There's a lot of pieces and parts. And the legislative process is complex. But I will say, to my knowledge, the county is doing everything it can to seek and secure low-cost state and federal financing. And we can witness that in our recent success with securing low-cost financing for the project overall. Mr. Mendelson goes on to ask about assessing users, and these are kind of my words, based on a wealth assessment. If someone is more wealthy, they should pay more or than others. And again, as we've discussed previously, there's no provision in state law that would allow the county to evaluate the wealth of users and make a wealth-based determination regarding paying costs. It is simply a benefit assessment. So we've talked a little bit about that. And then there's some continuing commentary in these comments that the responses, unfortunately, a number of these comments are factually inaccurate and they misrepresent a number of circumstances, but in any regard, none of these topics have anything to do with the subject of the hearing, and so a response has not been provided for these.
Okay. Any members? Anybody have any questions or comments? Nope. Very bad. Thank you very much. Are you going to stay for the last portion here or with us?
Yes, I will put on mute and I will listen.
Okay. Thanks a lot for everything.
Thank you.
All right, next up, the last thing, we have a review, the engineering report of H2S gas levels. This started to send these out from the FNS several months ago. They're pretty much the same every week. They go to the municipalities. So you should be getting those where your mayors are or supervisors. And Bob, can you go into that?
Sure. Peter, like you said.
Explain that process with
Sure.
how we're getting these from my.
We monitor, this is down in Airplane Park. Little background. There's the communities of Chester has a pump station, and the village of South Blooming Grove has a pump station. Those two pump stations converge on a single, through force mains, to a single sewer that goes down into the village of Monroe to intersect with the interceptor that goes to the Harriman wastewater treatment. There's been, over the years, a number of complaints about odors in the park, long before I got here. So what we've been doing is we've installed hydrogen sulfide meters. Now, hydrogen sulfide is a gas that's formed by decomposition of organic matter. And in this case, the organic matter that's in sewage. The decomposition of that matter creates hydrogen sulfide gas, which is an unpleasant odor to me, perfectly frank. So the other issue with hydrogen sulfide gas is it can be corrosive at higher levels. So it's important to the district to monitor those levels in the manholes, not only for fugitive odors, but also to stay up to date on the condition of the manholes and what kind of environment the concrete's under and become damaged. So it's monitored for two different purposes. And so in addition, let's take it one step back. So those monitors, we have hydrogen sulfide gas monitors in in several of those manholes. There's a weekly report where the levels of gas is recorded and sent to the Chester to South Dillon Grove and also provided to Monroe, both the town and the village. In addition to the monitoring in the manholes, we do what's called fugitive gas monitoring. The state has a standard for that.
When you say ambient, that's outside the man.
Ambient, yes. We do that by walking around with a meter and taking samples. The state has, and results of those samples are included in that weekly report. The state has a air quality standard of 0.01 parts per million per hour. So if you take a series of tests with a very sensitive meter, and if the average of those samples are below 0.01 parts per million, now mind you, 0.01 is 1/100th of a part per million. It's pretty small, okay? That's how powerful this stuff is. In this past week, of the samples we've taken, the average has been 6.0006 parts per million per hour.
Can you say it again?
0.030,
Okay.
decimal point, and 3 zeros and a 6. That's 6/10,000ths of a part per million, okay? Where the standard that DEC requires is 1/100th of a part. So you can see we're far below that.
So it's far below, this past week, it's been far below.
Far below that, and it's
The
been,
DEC,
it-
recommended safe level, would you call it?
well, it's their air quality
It's their
standard,
standard.
okay? The other sample we took was 0.0011 parts per million, a little higher, okay, almost double. The other one was 0.0006. This one was 0.0011. If you get, so it was 0.0012, it would be
Still
double,
underneath
right?
the, threshold.
Far below, the tune of 1/100th. However, it's an unpleasant odor. We get regular complaints about it. And we've been addressing it through resealing of the manholes. Changing, we do have vent pipes. We're very judicious in changing those filters. We've closed off a number of them and sealed them off, in addition to sealing the manholes, in an effort to eliminate any odors. There are, as you say, minimized. There are still some odors in the park, right? But they're below the DEC standards, but we're attacking them every day. We're down there all the time, resealing manholes.
I know a couple
It's
weeks
tight as-
ago, we had a problem, and there was a problem with the treatment at one of the pump stations.
Correct.
And to clarify what Bob said, he's talking about sealing it, he's talking about doing what we have control over, which is what our staff has been doing. Which then goes into the things that we have less control over, what's coming to the system, which I think, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. Eric's 100% correct. That's everything we can do. We monitor, we do any kind of upgrades, repairs, as well as monitoring the condition of the pipe system. Corrosion. But the corrosivity. But the other part of that is the two communities, Chester has a pump station, as I mentioned in the beginning, South Blooming Grove has a pump station. Both of them treat for hydrogen sulfide. Well, they treat the sewage, which reduces hydrogen sulfide gas. Chester has a system, I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but it's made by a company named Anya. And it's basically a oxygenation system that pumps ozone into the sewage. It's like, think about soda water, okay, aerating it. That oxygen will reduce the hydrogen sulfide gas. Village of South Blooming Grove injects sodium hypochlorite, basically really strong Clorox, into the pump station, into the wet well. And that also reduces this decomposition of the organics that produces the gas. We did have an issue a couple of weeks ago where Village of South Blooming Grove reduced or ceased chlorination for a short period of time. We got word that they ran out of product and we're waiting for additional deliveries, which was going to take several days. We spoke to them and we got that within hours, the product was delivered. But there was a drop off in treatment.
All right, so I guess
That's
just to kind of move along on this, now, I know you always check the chemicals and everything like that, but now it's part of the routine now to make sure that everything is ordered and in stock and everything is functional.
correct.
Chester.
That's correct. But we also stop in Chester, make sure the
No, I'm
annual
saying-
system is
I'm
up
saying
and
You're also
operating,
checking on
yes.
Chester to make
Yeah.
sure that their oxygenation system is running.
It's
Okay.
up and running, and at least 3 times a week.
Yeah.
We stop down at these facilities
Right,
and double check.
and, like you say, it's a pleasant odor.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it comes and goes, and, thank you for that update.
Yeah,
And we'll continue to get the updates from you every week on those levels. One last question. The county ordered a new, more sensitive ambient meter,
yes,
and has that arrived yet?
not yet. It's more sensitive, but it also records the data for us. Right now, we have to take the meter, take a reading, record it.
Mhm.
Move, take another reading, record it. This new meter not only has that sensitivity, but as we're walking around, it will generate the readings and a readout of the
So you
number of
can get a
readings
printout.
and a printout.
Okay, that'll be interesting to see that when we get that available.
So that'll be, as soon as it's available, it'll be in the reports.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Sure.
Any, legislative Tortel?
Thank you, Chairman. Are we monitoring around I didn't hear you say anything around Harriman by the main plant?
No, we do, we're in communication with the mayor. We've always been with Mayor Welly and Mayor
Mitchell?
Mitchell, but was our guy in between, was Chichester. The chief operator calls him and all the time, they're on speed dial with each other. If we get a day where we anticipate there's gonna be more orders than usual due to wind conditions, humidity, whatever, we'll give them a call and tell them what we're doing. We have border control measures we take at the plant. So it's just
Thank you.
on top of that.
Michael? Anything? No? Chairman? Nope. Okay, seeing that, the desk is cleared and I adjourn this meeting. I thank everyone for attending. Thank you. Thanks.